Hello everybody, Jake, your resident content cowboy here. Yeehaw! Ranked is back in Pokemon Pocket, and here are 10 decks that you can take into ranked. Hey, I got it right. Here are 10 decks that you can take into ranked right now and do very well with. There are other decks in the game that you could absolutely play, but to use them, you would be a big loser. No, I'm obviously kidding. I actually think you should play whatever you like playing the most. There really is no penalty for playing a deck that you like more than something that is more meta, except it'll take you a little longer to reach the master rank. But let's get into it. 10 decks that you can use to cruise through your ranked journey in Pocket. In no particular order, our first deck is Charizard Y. Mega Charizard coming to the game able to do an insane amount of damage with a single hit, KOing just about anything on the other side every time it strikes. The best version of this deck, the most consistent one that has been out there in the community, is Charizard Y with Entei EX. This is a really solid combination, and this version that you're seeing right here is from a player named Snow White in a recent tournament. I do like this Charizard a lot. There also is a Charizard version where it's kind of just running Charizard and not stressing out too much about anything else, but this makes it a lot easier to get some of the cards you need. This deck also has an Indeedee EX, so you can use that to heal your Pokemon. Obviously, Charizard is going to take some damage in that active spot, but so will something like Entei. There are a lot of different ways you can play around this, but the big thought here is getting as much damage as you can to your opponents early and then finishing them off with Mega Charizard as the match goes on. You'll notice that Charizard decks don't really run something like Rare Candy because the Charmeleon in this set is so unbelievably good, able to power that Entei in the active spot or another Charizard or Charmander. This just sets up a lot of really great plays. Now, even though you have an Indeedee, you are only running Fire Energy in this deck. One nice thing is if you happen to get the Indeedee early, you put Fire Energy on it in the active spot, you have it retreat, you are able to use that later with a Flame Patch, so you're not too stressed out if you start with this opening, even though it is the worst possible opening you could start with, right? You want Entei in that active spot, you want to be able to draw through your entire deck, you want to get Charizard as quickly as you can, you want to do as much damage as you can with Entei, and then finally bring in Charizard, knockout blow, win the entire thing. This is the strongest version, it looks like, of Char in the game right now. It's a pretty formidable meta deck, but I don't think it's the absolute best thing in the game. Our second deck, I want to talk about a Pokemon that really surprised me in this set, and that's Mega Lopunny. I love this thing. I think it is so fun. The version you're looking at right now is Mega Lopunny with Lucario and Hitmontop. This is just really fun. Hitmontop does so much annoying damage. Lucario can actually make some huge plays, and it also increases the power of Lopunny, which is really hilarious at times. And I just love Hitmontop dealing more damage in the active spot. In fact, with Lucario on the bench, it will KO baby Pokemon and still hit the bench for that solid 20 damage. I love this combination. It is super fun, even though there is another Lopunny deck that is gaining a lot of popularity right now. This one is one of my absolute favorites, and it's such a treat. So I didn't know how enjoyable it would be flipping the two coins with Lopunny, but I think the big thing that sold me on this card was the fact that even if you don't hit, your opponents are confused, which puts them in a really tough spot if they have a Mega out there that they need to attack with. They're basically, you know, without them having some way to cleanse it, 50-50 on whether or not they can even hit you with their next attack, which is really, really satisfying. I've seen a few players play this next version here. This is from a player named Crimson Ruby. This has the Mega Lopunny, Hitmontop, 2 Hitmontops, and Cleffa. So this gives you the ability to either start with Cleffa and pull the cards you need, right, to get Lopunny online, and then of course free retreat as soon as you're able to put something in the active spot, or just start ideally with Hitmontop. Hitmontop is the way to start with this deck if you can make it happen. Starting with Hitmontop allows you to just start chipping at your opponents in a big way, setting up that wall so that you can get Lopunny into the active spot, and then finally take out some of your stronger opponents. This deck has a couple Cyrus in it, which I do think is really valuable. Obviously, when you're chipping at the bench with Hitmontop, you are looking to set up a play where you bring a Mega in that is already damaged and let Lopunny finish it off, which is something you are able to do right here. And again, that Cleffa just sets up a nice situation where even if you don't get exactly what you want right away, you could start digging through your deck for that bunny. Number 3, Mega Venusaur. Mega Venusaur is very solid, and a huge part of that is, of course, also its stage 1. Just like the Charizard deck, the stage 1 here is incredible. That is Ivysaur. Ivysaur allowing you to power essentially Mega Venusaur right up, right? 1 energy on this allows you to grab a couple more. Next turn, you are Mega Venusaur, and you are already swinging for some really solid damage that you've been able to ramp up yourself, as well as poisoning and putting your opponent to sleep. A lot of these decks are going to rely on only Venusaur. We have a couple variants that I put up on the channel. I really like the Lilligant variant, but the one you're looking at right now is Mega Venusaur with a base Venusaur in this set as well. This allows you to deal with things like Oricorio. Of course, you can deal with Oricorio through poison damage, but it can be a little tough. But this allows you to deal with things like Oricorio and set up an opportunity to not only lose the Venusaur, but then move into a Mega Venusaur and continue to fight your opponents. Sometimes it's better just to have that Mega Venusaur though, and you're just gonna have to lose the matches that you were destined to lose anyway. The next deck we're gonna take a look at with Venusaur is from a player named Artif. This is Mega Venusaur and Chingling. So we kind of looked at the version of Lopunny with Cleffa. This is Mega Venusaur Chingling. This obviously is fully based around Mega Venusaur and Ivysaur. You have that Chingling to slow your opponents down and give you some free retreat opportunities, but this deck is entirely based around setting up Venusaur as quickly as you can, slowing your opponents if you need to, and then bringing Venusaur in for that big time KO. Mega Venusaur, incredibly powerful, and this deck allows you to leverage that while also slowing your opponent down. One card to notice here in the Venusaur decks is the Heavy Helmet, by the way. Given that all of these Pokemon have such a high retreat cost outside of the Chingling that we were just talking about, that Heavy Helmet I think is really, really solid for Venusaur. Just sets up a ton of great plays, slows your opponent down from hurting you in a lot of unfortunate ways for them, and allows you as a Pokemon that likes to kind of be in the active spot for a long time, hitting your opponents, stalling them out. It just sets up great moments for you. Our 4th deck, Mega Absol and Hydreigon. This card is great. I mean, Hydreigon is insane. It's the new Rampardos. Everybody is talking about it. Absol, still an incredibly powerful Mega, able to attack for only 2 energy, and given that Hydreigon kind of powers itself for the most part, you can easily get that 2 energy on. The first version I want to show you here is from a player named Gact. This did extremely well in a recent tournament, going 15-1. This has the Hydreigon line as well as 2 Furfrou. This card I think is really excellent, being able to reduce damage it takes by 20, being able to one-shot baby Pokemon, as well as being able to slot into a lot of different decks because it's colorless. Just a really, really stellar card. The rest of the set here also has an Indeedee. Indeedee, very, very good for a lot of these Hydreigon decks because you do take damage by putting energy on yourself. You're already damaging yourself, and this kind of helps mitigate that, as well as helps mitigate damage to Furfrou and Mega Absol, which is really nice. Couple of Rocky Helmets here make it really annoying for your opponents to do damage to you, regardless of what's in that active spot, but Furfrou is a really, really fun card to put this on. This also has a couple of copycats, which I think are really valuable. Cyrus, Geo, Pokeballs, things like that. Really, really solid version of this deck that I think is very exciting, and you're going to see a lot of Absol Hydreigon, I think. Another version of Absol that a lot of players have been playing is a version with Chingling, as well as the baby Absol. I guess it's not a baby, but kind of that base non-EX Absol, right? So you're able to chip at your opponent's bench, you're able to hit them with the Chingling, slow them down, Hydreigon can come in and deal insane damage, and then you also still have Mega Absol to finish off your opponents, to get rid of, you know, the cards in their hand. Just like so many cool options in a deck like this. This version was run by a player named Brendan in a recent tournament, but I've seen a few players kind of run this version of Mega Absol. Pretty similar to what we looked at before, but you're kind of trading out those Furfrou for an Absol and a Chingling. Our 5th deck is Mega Altaria. Mega Altaria, I think, is actually one of the best decks in the game right now. It just feels like so many decks have a tough time into this. It has a lot of options. It's a fun deck to play because you do have a lot of choices that you could make. This first version that we're looking at, I posted on the channel the other day. This is the Furfro version with Mega Altaria. Really solid using this new card. It can easily set up, you know, in the active spot for very cheap, dealing damage to your opponents while you set up on the bench, and you don't lose much at all by having that in the active spot. However, there are other versions of this deck that have things like Chingling and stuff like that to be more aggressive. Jirachi, Sableye, I like a lot of those decks as well. Let's take a look at one of them right now. This is from a player named Game Prodigy that ran this in a recent tournament. This has the base Altaria, Sableye, Jirachi, Indeedee EX, and the Chingling. I think the amazing thing about Altaria is there are so many good options with this card. You can have multiple Indeedees, Chingling, Jirachi is just a really solid card, able to do that 30 damage to anything on the board, right? There are just a lot of great options for this card, and the playstyle I think is very fun. One thing that I personally love with the Mega Altaria decks, I almost said with the Indeedee decks, with the Mega Altaria decks, is to have a Mars in the deck somewhere. That way, if you are able to lose a couple points and then bring in Altaria, which in my personal play style of this, I often do like kind of give up a couple points before I bring in Altaria. You can then Mars them and really destroy anything they have going on in their hand, which is extremely satisfying. Deck 6 is Jolteon EX. This first version we're going to be taking a look at, I said first version, is from Turbone101, a player who ran this at a recent tournament, but I do see a few players are kind of adopting this strategy of just running Jolteon, basically. So it's 2 EVs, 1 EV EX, and 2 of the Jolteon EXs, and either 1 or 2 of the base Jolteons in this deck as well. Obviously, those base Jolteons are able to do kind of insane damage there with that beginning bolt, right? If you're not able to get Jolteon EX in the active spot. But the real treat of this deck is having Jolteon EX in the active spot right away. It is so funny, so fun. It is really good into all of these new megas that take ludicrous amounts of energy, like Ivysaur like charging up with energy, Charizard charging up with energy. There are just so many cards that hate having Jolteon in the active spot, and I have to say I absolutely love it. It's like up there as one of my favorite ways to play this game. It's pretty cheesy, I'll admit, but super trolly, super fun. It just brings a smile to my face thinking about putting Jolteon in the active spot and your opponent going, because you know they have to power and it's going to be frustrating for them. Now, there are some decks that actually do well into Jolteon, right? Because they don't require a lot of energy. Like the Altaria deck that we talked about before isn't too stressed out by this, but everything is a little annoyed seeing that Jolteon EX in the active spot. Here is another version of Jolteon. This is Jolteon EX with Zeraora and Oricorio. This is a little more my style. I kind of love having the Zeras and the ability to elemental switch, move the energy up so that you can fight your opponents that way. It's just easier to get some of your cards online. Oricorio is kind of busted, so it's great having something like that in your deck as well. However, the previous Jolteon that we were looking at does seem to be doing a little bit better recently in tournament play, so it might be very powerful just to have that base setup, go all in on Jolteon and try to take your opponents down as quickly as possible, rather than working around multiple working parts of Oricorio and Zeraora and things like that. Deck number 7, Magnezone. Magnezone Heliolisk is the first one I want to show you. This is one of the first ones we made with the new set, and there are some different cards that you could throw in here, but this is such a satisfying combination. It's so fast, so strong. I love it. An easy one to climb with as well because the games are quick. You are dominating your opponents extremely quick, and you are making plays that are just so unbelievably fun, powering the bench, sending the energy up with the switch to the Heliolisk, doing absurd damage, and then bringing in this new Magnezone that is extremely good, really powerful, and forces your opponents to 50-50 on a lot of their attacks in that active spot. Just such a satisfying combination. I absolutely love it. Of course, if you're not interested in running the Heliolisk line, you could be running the Magnezone or Oricorio version. This was played in a recent tournament by a player named Trelos. This deck is extremely strong. Obviously, you have Ori to help you deal with all of these Mega and EX Pokemon, and you have the Clement so that you are able to get your Magnetons even easier. You only need one in this deck because you're only looking for 2 cards, right? Those 2 Magnetons. It could set up some really powerful plays. It powers itself. It does solid damage, and Ori is just a brutal, annoying card for so many decks to deal with. Sometimes when your opponents see that you even have a lightning deck, the second they see Oricorio hit the board, they end up conceding, and that's great for climbing ranked. Like, take the free wins for sure. Our 8th deck is a deck that admittedly I haven't played this season. I played a version of this last season. This is run by a player named Deft Andre in a recent tournament. Did I say that right, or is it Deft Andrew? It's Deft Andre, I got it right. This is dual Decidueye. 2 Decidueyes are even better than 1, and this deck, well, has 4 of them. It's Decidueye EX and base Decidueye. The base Decidueye, or non-EX version, I should say, is so good. Sniping Arrow 70 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon can set up huge plays. You are able to KO so many threats with this. It's incredible. And then, of course, Decidueye EX with Pierce the Pain can move in and deal 100 damage to that target that you ended up hitting. This is all in on Decidueye, but the power of the quick growth extract as well as rare candy sets this up to make some really exciting plays. You have only 1 Dartrix in this deck, so depending on how you draw that Dartrix, you're going to need to be careful as to whether or not you're using quick grow extract to move it to the Decidueye EX or not. Obviously, having only 1 of the Dartrix means if you get the Rowlet early and the quick grow, you can use this into Dartrix reliably. But if you start drawing those rare candies, they're kind of in a weird way a rare brick in your hand. So you're just going to need to be conscious as to when you use a card like this. The nice thing about only having 2 base Pokemon is you have 1 Pokeball in this deck, which gives you room to have things like Erica, Lily, Rocky Helm, and on and on and on. Number 9, Suicune Ninja. Look, I don't like it any more than you do, but this version of this deck was run by multiple players in recent tournaments, which went very deep. Like, we had like 3 or 4 players run this exact version of this deck and make it all the way to the end or even win the tournament. So it's Froakie, 1 Frogadier, 2 Greninjas, a Gren EX, a couple Suicune EXs, and an Indeedee EX, as well as an Irida, Mars, 2 Cyrus. It's Suicune Ninja. It's a variant of Suicune Ninja. This one happens to be doing very well in this meta right now. Greninja EX does spice up a deck like this a little bit, but you kind of know what you're getting with something like this. I wouldn't be bringing it to you except for the fact that it is insanely strong, and yeah, Suicune. I don't know what else to say about this. If this is your first time playing Pokemon Pocket, hi, by the way, welcome. I say yeehaw sometimes, and people like that to varying degrees. But second, Suicune Ninja is disgusting, and it's been so good for so long, and Greninja is broken, and Suicune's amazing, and, you know, play at your own risk. You're gonna lose friends. For our 10th and final deck, it's going to be Blaziken. Mega Blaziken is still quite powerful in this meta, even though it has cooled off a little bit. The version you're looking at first here is Blaziken Heatmore. This is a really fun version of this deck because you're able to sort of chip at your opponent's bench while you wait to power up your Blaziken. You don't really lose anything by powering Heatmore because with Flame Patch, you can get energy onto the Blaziken so incredibly fast. It's a nice wall that you can use to damage your opponents, KO some of their baby Pokemon if they're not in the active spot, or start doing some damage to that bench so then you can end up bringing in one of their powerful Pokemon and KOing it with Mega Blaziken once you get it into that active spot. Blaziken, extremely fast, really, really fun. However, there is a version of this deck that is incorporating some of the new cards that seems to be doing really well that I want to tell you about. This was used by a player named NE. This is Mega Blaziken with 1 Heatmore, but also a Furfrou and a Chingling. So you could set up some really annoying plays with this. Furfrou being splashed into a lot of decks recently, which I think is really solid, and Chingling is insane. The really cool thing about having Chingling in general is even if it's not what you want in the active spot, you lose essentially nothing for that. Just retreat it for free, bring in that Furfrou or that Heatmore. A lot of cool plays with this. You also have a May inside this deck so that you are able to switch some Pokemon out to make sure that you get what you need, right? The extra Heatmore or Furfrou or even Chingling can be used to fish through your deck for that Mega Blaziken that you need to get online. An incredibly powerful setup for Mega Blaze. So there you go, 10 amazing decks to climb ranked. I hoped it helped. Thank you all. I'll see y'all next time. Oh, what? You're still here? All right, I'm gonna give you a few more. These are just fun decks. If you made it to this part of the video, comment something fun so we'll all know you made it here. Use the word hill in your comment. That way I'll know that you're one of the real ones. All right, let's talk about some of these decks that are not maybe the most meta, but just a couple of fun picks right here before we go. From a player named Little Plume comes this Whimsicott Ariados deck with a Pheromosa. This is just a fun deck in general, a few different ways to play it. Players were using Kartana for a little while, but this is a version with Pheromosa. Super fun. Of course, you've got that Cyrus in there so that you can hit with Pheromosa, bring them into the active spot, annoy the heck out of them because they cannot retreat after getting that Ariados online. Really fun setup, such a fun combination, and I mean, I enjoy this deck a lot, and it's just a chill climbing deck that, like, hey, you run into the wrong thing, whatever, but sometimes, like, you're just having so much fun with all these Pokemon they can't get out of the active spot. This is a Suicune deck that you don't have to feel that bad about. It is Suicune with a base Gyarados that allows you to sort of clean up a lot of your water cards, get rid of them, and then attack your opponent for some insane damage. It has Manaphy's, Mantikes, Pyukumuku. A lot of these are just used so Gyarados has some of that food that it can gobble up and deal huge damage. This is a really, really fun deck, and I know Rich, one of our viewers and mods, absolutely loves a version of this, so I had to shout it out. This is from a player named Darkus that did really well in a recent tournament with it. So super fun, like off meta deck. And finally, I posted this on the channel the other day, Ditto Rampardos. It's hilarious, it's mean. When it works, you're just cackling playing a deck like this, and you gotta show some love to something like that. There are a ton of other decks that you could play. There are decks with Blastoise and Steelix and things like that that aren't absolutely awful that you could play as well, but I wanted to make this video somewhat short, and now here I am rambling on and on with some of these off-meta choices. But thank you to all the real ones. I'll see y'all next time. We did it.